So last week I bought the brand new Tudor Black Bay 54 and I made a video about it. And in that video I said if you guys are interested, I'll do a comparison video against the Black Bay 58 and answer any questions you might have. As it turns out, a lot of you were interested, so here we are. In this video, we're going to be looking at the key differences between these two watches, seeing if the Black Bay 54 bracelet fits on the Black Bay 58, and looking at what watch might be right for you if you're trying to choose between these two. So let's start with specifications. So from an aesthetic, movement, and just a basic specifications point of view, these two watches are almost the same. So both the Black Bay 58 and the Black Bay 54 have a case material of stainless steel, 200 meters of water resistance, a Tudor in-house caliber movement, and 70 hours of power reserve. Their functions are largely the same, but the biggest difference I spotted between these two is the wearing experience. The Black Bay 58 has a case size of 39mm, a lug-to-lug of 47.5mm, and a thickness of 11.6mm. I measured the thickness with the case back and dome sapphire included. It doesn't feel as thick as that on the wrist. The Black Bay 58 really has some of those Goldilocks measurements that so many people are looking for. Here it is on my 5.5-inch wrist versus my husband's 6.5-inch wrist. I think it is probably a tad big on me, but I like wearing chunky, oversized watches. If you don't like wearing oversized watches and you want the right proportions, this watch is just right on a 6.5-inch wrist to a 7.5-inch wrist. Looking at the new Tudor Black Bay 54, this watch has a case size of 37.3mm, a lug-to-lug of 45.8, and a thickness of 11mm, with the case back and dome sapphire included. On the wrist, this watch still probably wears a little large on my 5.5-inch wrist. I personally think it looks perfect proportions on my husband's 6.5-inch wrist. I'd recommend this one for someone with a 5.5-inch wrist to maybe even as large as a 7-inch wrist. I should say, for the nitpickers watching, these two technically have different movements. So inside the Black Bay 58 is the MT 5402 movement, and inside the 54 is the MT 5400. The MT 5400 is smaller, but functionally exactly the same as the Black Bay 58 blue movement. One of the biggest things you notice between these two and comparing these two right out the gates is the thickness. So I'm going to do my best to capture it. Hopefully I can serve it some justice. Even though my calipers only measure the Black Bay 54 as 0.6mm thinner than the Black Bay 58, you can really feel it on the wrist, especially when you're wearing it with sleeves. But if you prefer a tool watch that feels beefy with some wrist presence, it's the Black Bay 58 all the way. Size aside, the biggest differences that it really comes down to with these watches is clasp, crown, and little dial details. I wish I could have found a third word beginning with the letter C, but I couldn't. Let's start with the clasp, since this is the thing the most people have been asking me about. So the new Black Bay 54 is fitted with the Tudor T-Fit clasp, which is just fantastic. This clasp offers you 5 positions of on-the-fly adjustment and easily glides if you need to add or take away a couple of millimeters. This might sound like a really tiny amount, but just you wait till it's the summer and you start puffing up and you just want to loosen that bracelet a little bit. The Black Bay 58 clasp, on the other hand, has no on-the-fly adjustment, but you can make micro adjustments with a tool. To answer the most asked question I received, yes, you can take off the Black Bay 54 bracelet and put it onto the Black Bay 58. Both of these watches have a 20mm lug width and drill locations that allows for changing the bracelets over. So with both of these watches, the end links are separate to the bracelet and the spring bars hold the bracelet through the end links to the case. I feel like that doesn't make sense to say, so I'm going to do my best to show it on the video right now. But because the case of the 54 is thinner, the end links are also thinner. So if you want to swap the bracelet, all you have to do is keep the Black Bay 58 end links and attach it to the T-Fit bracelet. If that makes sense, hopefully I'm able to capture it in a way where it does, because I feel like just saying the words doesn't make sense. Next, the Black Bay 54 has a far smaller crown, so Tudor has just updated their watch's winding stems, making them a little shorter and causing the crowns to sit closer to the case. To me, this is long overdue and it helps the watches look so much more refined. The Black Bay 54 has a far smaller crown in size as well. Both of these Black Bays take inspiration from 1950s Tudor Submariners, with the Black Bay 58 taking inspiration from the 1958 Big Crown, hence the Big Crown, and the Black Bay 54's predecessor was Tudor's first ever dive watch, the 1954 Oyster Prince Submariner, reference 7922. Even though both look to the past and take inspiration from the past, I'd say the Black Bay 54 wears far more like its vintage predecessor with those vintage specifications, whereas the Black Bay 58 feels like the modern interpretation in wearing size of its predecessor. And the last difference, but not the least, is those little details on the dial, and most notably, the snowflake seconds hand. Looking at the dial, both watches are pretty dang similar, with the exception of the seconds hand. The Black Bay 58 has a snowflake kinda diamond on the seconds hand, whereas the Black Bay 54 has a lollipop seconds hand. Honestly, this is something I barely noticed. I don't really care about this, but I guess if you absolutely made me choose which one I prefer the Black Bay 54's lollipop seconds hand by a hair. There's not much in it for me. But yeah, I think those are all the differences I can spot between these two. Hopefully I answered everyone's questions as well. Yeah, sorry about all the Black Bay content I've been cranking out lately. I know it's been a lot. I'm just so excited, and if you're hating the Black Bay content, I have awful news for you, because I currently have one of the OG original Black Bays coming in right now to do the ultimate Tudor Black Bay video. I'm sorry if you're hating it, but I just think it would be such a great Tudor reference for anyone who's comparing these watches or thinking of what one to get for themselves. So sorry. Don't forget to do all that YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. Bye. Ooh, thank you Pope tier patrons. Ooh, you're the best. Pope tier patrons. Ooh, thank you to Pope tier patrons.